Welcome back. Today we're going to go through what is argued to be the most healthy diet across the board out there, which is the Mediterranean diet. Pros, cons, how we would adjust it, and some extra value on top. So Jeff, let's start with what is the Mediterranean diet?
That one's been coined as like the universal healthiest diet. You know, it was kind of modeled after traditional diets in like Greece and Italy and the Middle East. You're going to have a lot more, still trying to say as much whole food as possible, which you should do as much as if you can across no matter what plan you do. But you're going to have, like healthier fatty fishes, still quality protein, fruits, vegetables. It's kind of like, I always tell people, like, they're like, man, people in Italy, like, they look so good, or in Greece, like, they're not overweight. And, I mean, you're still going to have some of that, but, they live to be 102, so it's just the diet itself is supports. It's pretty much going to check a lot of boxes. Mediterranean, for cardiac wise, like, that's usually one of the go-to. I know my partner, that worked cardiac for years, that's typically his number one recommendation for anyone that has like cardiac plaque deposition, just because you're able to kind of really put yourself in a good spot to prevent further cardiac damage or cardiac plaque deposition.
Why is that? Is that less processed food?
Well, less processed, but a lot of it's going to be leaner, less saturated type meats, and fish or whatever. You're still going to limit like chicken and stuff. So not so much the actual animal. Yeah.
Like when I think Mediterranean, I think fish, nuts, salad. Yeah.
So a lot of times fish, as long as you're not doing like high amounts of tuna or like mackerel, which you got to be worried about, like mercury. But having those healthier, fattier fishes, you get good fats, omegas out of them, and omegas are super productive and super beneficial for your cholesterol profile.
Dude, speaking of fish, I used to love tilapia, and like he's like, oh, it tastes like chicken, right? Because when I was younger, I didn't really like fish, and till I found out how it's like the farmed, like how disgusting tilapia is. So that's a note. If you're eating tilapia, stop eating tilapia.
Well, it's kind of like, it's funny, you kind of, there's levels to food as you get older, right? Yeah. I think when you're younger, like I used to, in college, I remember I would buy like a can of tuna, and like it was a can of tuna and a mac and cheese for like a meal under $1.50 or whatever. But there's like doing that type or having like tilapia, just the quality of the fish is garbage. But when I was young and I was broke, that was it.
And the other thing is that like if you work in like a office setting, bringing fish to lunch should be a felony.
Yeah, it should not be allowed. But tilapia tastes like dirt to me.
Really? I used to love it. And then again, until I found out like how it was farmed and like actually what I'm eating, it's so gross. But besides the point, let's go into the pros. Mediterranean, outside of obviously, if you're living for, obviously everyone's living for longevity, and Mediterranean is good for heart health, cardiac stuff. What are some other pros that you would consider?
Inflammation, having like a lot of those omegas and having, fruits and vegetables, antioxidants. So it's definitely going to have less inflammation across the board, which, we all know inflammation feeds a lot of cellular dysfunction. But from a cardiac side, I think it's just, things that you should look to, not so much just fish, but healthy oils, more unsaturated oils, high quality olive oil. But that's like if you live there, that's what they eat, So,
is like, so to the Mediterranean diet is, I know you mentioned like you limit like chicken is, so you limit like what, red meats and
they try to like a very limited amount just because they don't really eat much of that.
So this is a good iteration for the vegans.
It would be a good transition point for sure. Just try to, it's probably the closest thing out of pescatarian, right?
You're just adding a little bit of animal
pretty
meat.
much same, healthy nuts. A lot of people are like, oh, wine's on there too. Wine, kind of fits within that, but like, I think a lot of people would like overconsume that.
Overconsumption of anything is bad for you, but I think it's true. Like a glass of wine, red wine is good for you.
Well, they'll
not good for you. It's not,
Well, people say that, like, oh, it's going to help with blood circulation and blood pressure. And it's like, well, yeah, it will. It'll kind of thin out the blood and you freeze better and oxygenate better.
Or maybe you just like red
But
wine.
I kind of look at it as like, if you're having to use red wine to thin out your blood and like control like blood circulatory flow, like you're going to probably end up overweight. Your liver is going to be punched, which is your main thing that filters the crap out of our system. Like,
Yeah.
I'll argue that.
Yeah. Would you consider?
I think that was just people's reason to be able to take a
drink more
healthy plan, but add some wine so they
Sure.
could just like, it's on there.
Yeah. Well,
I was just say maybe the wine that you're getting in Italy
is better probably.
Right.
But I think to what your point just was, is that is a potential con of the Mediterranean diet is the lack of structure.
Yep.
Right. Where it's like you can kind of throw some things in there that aren't necessarily healthy. So what are some other cons, or would you consider the Mediterranean diet optimal for an athlete?
I think you can make it that, like we're saying, you can make any plan a good plan or a bad plan.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to come down to what's your goal, what's your physical activity, what type of fuel do you need to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So I think you can. I think a lot of people will, you don't want to be crushing pasta all day, but you definitely, it's, still will help you out with performance.
That's a good point too, though, because if you're gonna go on a Mediterranean diet based on the fact that people in like Europe live longer and they're skinnier and they're healthier, they might be eating pasta a lot more, but it's also a different kind of pasta.
Yeah.
Like we don't eat the same pasta as people in Italy eat. It's completely different, just the makeup of it.
Yeah. Well, a lot too. And then that'll go back to like inflammation. You have, the quality of the pasta, it's not, like even with like wheat and gluten, it's completely different at gut response.
Yeah.
When it's natural. But you got to remember too, I guess in Greece and Italy, so how can you eat, let's just say this, like how can you have like pasta here and feel bloated and have issues, but over there you don't? A lot of what they put in their foods, they only kind of put in what's growing in season.
Right.
There's stuff that's not being engineered all the time that's placed in. They like if it's growing and it's in season, they use it. So that's a big thing to take into account.
That's true.
And that's why a lot of times like their guts aren't as inflamed. They're not as overweight.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a big part of like the processing of the actual food and not trying to force growth on stuff that is not meant to be growing.
Which would be like we're getting like all the folic acid and all that stuff, which is what they're missing over there. That's probably one of the bigger differences in how we digest the pasta.
Yep.
So, and even speaking to that point of, we mentioned this in a prior episode, but it's like where I can eat an entire bowl of pasta and I'll be hungry an hour later, or I can eat an 8-ounce steak and I'm satiated for probably 3-4 hours. Like, what is that difference? Like, why is that?
I mean, a lot of that has to do with like carbohydrates breaking down, obviously heavy, like protein in general is slow to break down in the system. So it's going to sit with you longer. Whereas you get into like carbohydrates and refined carbohydrates, a lot of times you're going to metabolize them quicker. You might feel more full and bloated right off the bat, but it takes 5 to 7, it's like 7 to 10% to break down carbohydrates through the digestive process when it comes to like thermic effective food. So it easier broke down, and fat's even easier. 3 to 5% gets broken, taken away through the digestive process, whereas protein 20 to 30%, it's much harder for our bodies to break it down. So it stays with us. It's longer for our body to kind of break it down and move it through the system.
Got it. So the Mediterranean diet, you're going to cut back on red meat, cut back on chicken. You're going to focus
more
on
like
fish, nuts, healthy
salad,
fats.
oils, healthy oils.
So what would we do to take this and make it a little bit better? How would we optimize on a Mediterranean diet?
I mean, it's kind of, if you're hitting a lot of what it's allowed to have, I think you're going to be good from a nutrient standpoint. If you're on a diet and you're in a calorie deficit, there's a deficiency. So you got to fill the gap with some vitamins in general. So like we said before, a multivitamin, as far as depending on your gut health, I would say a pre and probiotic. And then, if you're doing the fish and you're doing the healthy oils, you're probably going to be good from a cardiovascular standpoint and omega standpoint. The big thing I would say is maybe with like performance and training, just making sure you're prioritizing less processed carbohydrates if you're going to do it.
And you should be a lot more focused on like time restricted eating. Right. Because again, with a lack of structure, there's a lot of room for interpretation. So you should have days of like low carb days, where you want to eat minimal carbs if you're not training, things like that. So I think the biggest thing in the Mediterranean diet is due to the lack of structure, you have to be a little bit more on top of it yourself.
Well, and that's actually a great point because, you know, we went through a lot of these episodes. I think a lot of people need to learn to prioritize protein at almost minimum breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's really not rocket science when you're trying to maintain or lose weight or build muscle. But I think a lot of people, they go and they'll migrate to the foods that they want to eat. And so they're still going to be deficient. So, you know, whether you're Mediterranean, carnivore, whatever, you should be having protein unless you're vegan. And then you got to get like more lentils and beans and stuff like that. But breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then you start learning to fill the gaps. If you're physically active, more carbs. If you're not so physically active, less carbs. It's really that simple, you know, like.
Yeah, that is a great point because we've sat here and went through at this point pretty much all the major diets outside of, if you consider the American diet, which is disgusting. But the biggest thing that we keep coming back to and that I took from all of this is there's such a overcomplication when it comes to this stuff where if you just break it down to the basics and it's calorie surplus or calorie deficit, if you focus on the calorie, like for example, I could eat McDonald's cheeseburgers all day, every day. But if I am on a calorie deficit, I'll lose weight. The numbers on the scale, I might feel like shit. I might, there might be all different things that are negative about it, but I'll lose weight. So it's like, if you can just bring it back to a calorie surplus, you'll gain weight, calorie deficit, you will lose weight, and then just plug in the holes to your lifestyle to support that. You really don't need to worry about all these, which diet should I do to do this? Or which diet should I be on to do this? Just break it down for yourself. Do you want to lose weight? Be in a calorie deficit. Where are your deficiencies when your blood work while you're in a calorie deficit? Plug those holes. You'll feel great. Like you don't need to subscribe to a certain diet or a certain way of eating to be healthy or to lose fat or to gain muscle. You just got to figure out what's working for you and what's not, what you like to eat and what you don't like to eat, and just work around it. Build off the base of what do you like? What is your lifestyle? What kind of time do you have? And what are you optimizing for? Are you an athlete? Are you just trying to feel good? Are you trying to perform to the maximum? Like there's so many different caveats in this, and that's where people think nutrition gets so overcomplicated, but you just got to pick your goal. Like what are you trying to do? And then work backwards. Like it really is that simple. And it is unfortunate that with the overload of information we have now, it's so easy to get lost in this stuff. And it really just comes back down to the basics. Like you can go all the way in and go in deep in all these diets. And where did we land? Calorie deficit, calorie surplus, fill in the holes.
Mic drop. Well said, Mikey. But it really, you just hit it. Like it's, people want to overcomplicate everything, or they don't want to do their own, like they don't want to research and they don't want to they just want the diet handed to them or whatever. But if you would sit there and hone in and do everything you just said, it's pretty simple. You know, it just takes a little bit of discipline and that's it.
Stop focusing on the money because you're not going to spend more eating healthy than you do now. Promise. And it's just like, the overall I got from this is like, screw your diet. Like it's just words on paper. Like you just got to figure out what works for you. Because again, if you try to, this is where people get lost, where it's like, I'm going to do a keto diet. And then I do it for 30 days and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And it's like, I feel good again. Now I'm going to go back to the normal way of eating. So it's like, if you
go back to nothing.
Right. So if you're planning for longevity, you can't look at a diet that like a Mediterranean diet or a keto diet, because it's not going to work for you forever. So you got to find something that's going to work for you forever. That's going to be, whether that's 80-20, whether you have a half a day cheat meal, whatever it is. But people go all in too fast, try to pick something that doesn't work for their lifestyle, and then it fails, and then you fail, and again and again and again. And it's like, I give up on this. I'm never going to be healthy because you couldn't meet the standards of a carnivore diet. Like that's ridiculous. You know, like that's so far down the rabbit hole.
But I do encourage people to try. I think if you've never dieted in your life or you've never done a plan, I think going through one of these plans for a short period of time, and you start finding what you do and don't like, right? And it's good to I always encourage, it's probably the fastest way to learn nutrition is look at the plan, read what it's supposed to be, especially with AI, you could get so much information really quick, and learn, and then learn to take what you like out of there. And then, because end of the day, you could have one piece out of all the diet plans we talked about. And if it's per your goal calorically and you're prioritizing the macronutrients to support your goal, everything else doesn't mean shit.
Yep.
Like hit the numbers, hit the food, and just at the end of the day, just be consistent with the plan and watch your life change.
Yeah. And that going back to game changers that we talked about in the vegan diet is like, take Chad Ochocinco. He ate McDonald's cheeseburgers his whole NFL career. Would you tell somebody that's trying to get into the NFL to eat McDonald's cheeseburgers every day? No. Did Game Changers took a guy that is the strongest man in the world and says he's eating vegan now? Would you tell somebody that's trying to be the strongest man in the world to eat vegan?
The strongest guy in the world.
Yeah, used to be. So it's just like, no, it's different for everybody. Everything is so skewed, like, especially with those documentaries, there's an agenda behind it. And it's like, focus on you, what works for you, what fits your lifestyle, what's your goal? It really as simple as that. So screw the diets. If you really want to lose weight, call NuViva weight loss.
No. Yeah, but I mean, like I said, now, you know, the goal is obviously let's get the information, find what is going to, but use these plans as structure to learn. And outside of that, run with it.
That's it.
You know, do something. That's all I'm telling you to do is like watch your calories, eat somewhat cleaner, try to prioritize whole food and go about your life.
Yeah. So 2025 is make nutrition simple again.
Yes.